Chapter 6, The Master and the Slave. I had this list. The frog gentleman gave it to me the day before when I first got to the university. He told me that it was a list of all the classes I would have here. I looked at it yesterday when he first gave it to me, and it only had one class on it, which was the class I had just gone to. I was a little confused as I looked down at the folded piece of paper in my hand. Now I see there is another one written on the paper. It read Master Slave 101, written in bold red ink and highlighted with a yellow magic marker underneath. The list, I guess, changes each time I have a class or something. I then looked up. Arthur the Frog was standing there with a smile. The course syllabus rewrites after each tutorial experience, sir. It realigns itself, the syllabus, that is. It automatically aligns to your ever-changing level of experience and knowledge. I thought. And that's what was going on, I said back to him in a humble attempt to understand all the rules. I looked at him for some guiding light, like a kid in the first day of school. So where is this Master Slave 101 class, I said. Neon signs then appeared on the walls as I brought my head up to look, with bright flashing colors of pink and green pointing the way. Master Slave, they blinked on and off. The frog looked at me and pointed, without a word, down the hall of lights that were flickering before me. I walked into the assigned room and took a seat up near the front and waited. On the blackboard on the wall, written in bold script lettering, were the words, Master Slave, a two-world problem. Before long, the turtle walked into the room. Hello, he said to me. Welcome to Master Slave. He stood in the front of the room, arms folded, silent, with a slight grin to one side of his thick, leathered turtle face. He looked to the rear of the room, and then back up to the front, where he then began to speak. There are two ways for people to relate, he said. I was the only one in the room, mind you, but he was speaking to the entire room as if there were many different people present. I could tell this turtle likes to work a big room. He then proceeded to draw on the blackboard. One looks like this, he said, as he drew two boxes, one on top of each other. And one looks like this, he said, as he drew the same two boxes, but these ones side by side, with a double arrow pointing between them. In the first, one person is above the other, with communication going from the upper to the lower. In the second, people are side by side, with communication going both ways. The one on the left, the up-down relationship, is by far the most familiar to all of you. So I will talk about it first. In the human world, we see it in business, in government, and in families. I think we see it so much because it has the tone of efficiency. In your modern Western culture, you guys really worship efficiency. Before I explain what makes it efficient, let me give names to the two people, as he pointed to the box. I call the upper person the master, and he wrote master in the upper box. And I call the lower person the slave, and he wrote slave in the lower box. I've been using these labels for a long time. At first I picked the words because they created a strong reaction in humans, and I think that it is useful when teaching. After a while, people actually began to object to my words. They didn't want to be labeled. I don't blame them, of course. I was speaking of ways of relating and not about labeling people. But then I looked deeper at the use of these terms and found that two great human philosophers used the same terms for the same reasons, Hegel and Aristotle. So I guess that I'm in good company, and so I kept my terms, master and slave. Now, back to the question. Why is a master-slave relationship efficient? Well, this is because in it, decisions can be made very quickly. Not necessarily good ones, though often quick decisions are important to a group of people. How are decisions made quickly? Alfred went on. Well, a master-slave relationship has a feature I call a truth system. It's a method, an algorithm, a way of determining the truth, the correct thing, the right thing, what's real, what's important, what is a fact, what should be done. This truth system determines all the black and white things. What is absolute? How does it work? If you want to know what is the truth, you ask the master. What's correct, you ask the master. What is really going on? Ask the master. What should be done? Ask the master. You never ask the slave. It is the position of the master and the structure of the master-slave relationship that determines the point of view that is selected. So I say to you, if a couple wants to decide whether they're going to go into town on a Saturday afternoon, they simply turn to the master. The master says yes or no, and the decision is made in a quarter second. Alfred continued with the chalk in hand, talking to the room. While master-slave relationship is efficient, it is also quite unstable. It falls apart all the time. You can see this all around you. What makes it so? The slave does. First, masters never know when the slave is going to rebel. Slaves always rebel sooner or later. Think of the great slaves of the rebellions in human history, from Spartacus to the American Revolution and up to the present. To maintain stability, masters have to be prepared and on the lookout for the first sign of rebellion. I'll talk about this more later. The second source of instability is in the poor quality of the decisions made. In a master-slave relationship, the master makes all the decisions. However, they do not have all the data upon which to base good decisions. Both master and slaves have lots of data. Both slaves are not talking. They are typically quiet and are told to be. Thus, the master cannot take advantage of the slave's information and tends to make poor decisions. Amazingly, the slave often knows more about what is going on than the masters do. Slaves know what they themselves know, and they know what the master knows since the master talks. For making good quality decisions, a master-slave relationship is not the best. Because the master is anticipating rebellion, the rebellion makes the relationship unstable. Master-slave relationships have another feature that attempts to improve stability. I call it the punishment system, and it creates the painful things that happen or are threatened to happen to the slave. If the slave does not go along with the point of view of the master, it is the hurt that happens to the slave if they do not agree with the master. Now, there's also a punishment system, and it comes in two forms, either downward or upward. Let's take the downward first. I call this the downward push. The downward punishment refers to lowering the rank or status of the slave. This includes shaming, ridiculing, put-downs, humiliation, degradation, etc. The shaming can be very subtle or quite obvious. You don't agree is subtle. All sane people would agree with me is more obvious. You're an idiot is very obvious. When I was young, I would argue with my dad. He would dismiss me by saying, "You're just a stupid little turtle. What do you know?" I felt put down. Later, in Jungle High School, he told me that I was an adolescent turtle. Again, I felt put down. Downward pressure also includes lowering the rank of a person within some hierarchy or structure. In a company, this might be a demotion. If you talk that way, you risk that promotion. In the human military, it might mean lowering your pay grade. In a family, it might mean being reminded you are just a little turtle. In a community meeting, it might mean saying you're an outsider. What do you know? I think it's worth mentioning that threat is just an effective act of punishment. The brain is designed to recall things that lead up to pain and learns to react to the warning of pain just as quickly as to the actual pain. I knew a father who controlled his family by just clicking his tongue. They knew what pain would follow if they did not jump to it. Now, threat of put down seems an artwork in the human culture. Just turn to TV, talk radio. Any sane person knows that. Here's a message that is a threat to anyone who disagrees. If you speak up, you are already labeled insane. Every patriot supports the war. Here's a threat to anyone who disagrees. If you speak up, you are labeled anti-patriotic. Humans have it tougher than us reptiles, that's for sure. The second form of punishment is known as outward punishment or outward threat. This refers to disconnecting the slave from the relationship or community. We have many words for this. In a company, this would be firing. In the military, this would be a discharge. In a church, excommunication. In a community, to ostracize or shun. In a country, it is to exile. In a group, it is to cancel membership. In a meeting, it is to dismiss. In a family, it is go to your room or get out of here or keep your mouth shut or I'm not talking to you. In a marriage, it is separation, refusal to talk, and ultimately divorce. Again, Alfred continued, all these things can be threatened with just as much powerful effort. A famous threat in your world is the phrase, my way or the highway. This phrase is so common that it's become an adjective. Okay, I said under my breath. I wasn't sure if I should be talking or let some of the other imaginary students in the room talk or what, but I had a question for the turtle, so I spoke up. Alfred, I said timidly as I raised my right hand in respect. Yes, you up here at the front. Go ahead. Okay, how, Mr. Turtle, do you recognize one of these master-slave relationships? Good question, and Alfred continued. First, realize that this master I speak of lives in you. It is not a problem or a condition that exists in others. It is, to some extent, part of all humans at one point or another. But it is certainly more recognizable in some than in others. When a couple walks onto my path, or even when one member of a partnership comes upon me alone, I can usually recognize a master-slave relationship by two symptoms or signs. The first is silence. If someone complains about silence, I expect to find a master-slave problem. A relatively stable master-slave relationship, and remember, master-slave relationships are inherently unstable, will have communication going only in one way from master to slave. The slave will have learned to be silent about any disagreement. The slave will be keeping their different points of view secret. Typical master does not notice at first, but in more mature relationships, I often hear things like, I can't find out what she wants, or he won't tell me. He's quiet all the time. By the way, I think this is a pretty good definition of agreement. One person thinks there is agreement, but is in some level of delusion. Their partner knows there is no agreement, but is keeping silent about it. From this emerges the one-liner I like to use. If two people are agreeing, then at least one of them is lying, withholding their truth, so to speak. This silence is one thing that makes master-slave relationships unstable. The decision maker is uninformed and is often critically in delusion about what is going on in their partner. The turtle took a deep breath. He dropped his head slightly at that point and looked like it had come across some critical information inside of himself. When I'm working with an individual in a relationship, I often focus on this problem. If they mention something their partner does that they don't understand, I invite them to share why they don't know what is going on in their partner. When they share, he or she won't tell me, I then pre-validate the non-present and non-speaking partner and move to teaching about master-slave. Of course they don't tell you. You're probably a pain in the neck to talk to. Let's see if we can figure this out. You see, silence is so major a problem that I often give people a couple of one-liners to help them listen. As you get to know the grounds here at the university, you will discover an area we call the Garden of One-Liners. This is a special place here where one can go and read all of the one-liners. I've developed over the years. I've developed all these sayings. It's around the rear of the building over near the administration hall. The one-liner quotes that probably apply here are, the one reason a person is quiet is that it is not safe for them to talk. And the one reason a person lies is that it is not safe for them to tell the truth. Get to know these simple lines. They speak volumes of insight into the human condition. Stop living in delusion that you may know what your partner is thinking. There was a pause in the turtle's dissertation, a moment where he stood silent against the blackboard to engage some deep inner thought, perhaps. The air was warm and sweet, the sky blue as I've ever seen, filled with vast horizons that rolled out beyond the tall windows. Alfred soon raised his oddly shaped head and started once again to explain this master-slave relationship. The most common sign of a master-slave relationship is an agreement. Simply put, an argument. The most common sign of a master-slave relationship is an argument. Simply put, an argument is two people trying to be a master at the same time. Both are using the punishment systems, trying to pain their partner into pretending agreement with varying success. If you're arguing, then you are probably trying to establish your truth as the only truth and get your partner to appear to agree. Arguing is a verbal behavior of two bullies. A bully is a person who wants their way and will cause pain in others if they don't get it. Keep in mind, though, that arguing is admired in the human culture. People often express their power and strength in arguments. Human TV and politics are full of arguments. Yet almost all couples that come onto my path state that arguing is a problem. Now, what I've come to believe is that human couples are often more mature than the culture they live in. So, in summary, master-slave relationship master-slave relationship in couples is the common way of relating that evolved from a need for efficiency. But used like this by couples, it is a source of distress, arguing, and resentment. While efficient, it is unstable, painful, and does not provide for the intimacy that couples hope to find in a love relationship and vintage love and in the biological dream. With that said, the turtle stood in silence for the moment. He looked back and forth about the room as if waiting for some response to come from the imaginary crowd. Any questions? He finally added. Any questions on what I have just covered? I looked around as well. There were no questions coming from the room, of course. There was no one in the room. None that I could tell anyway. So I volunteered. So, I said as I raised my right hand once more. What is that other kind of relationship, the other one there on the blackboard? The one with the two boxes side by side? Good question, he snapped back. So you would like to know about the other kind of relationship, would you? And he went on. Many people don't seem to be aware that there is an alternative. I hear people say, either I have to fight or I lose and I have to be quiet. It doesn't have to be like that. There is a better way. A couple of 100 years ago, there occurred on the face of the earth an event. It was called the American Revolution. This revolution, I believe, was brought on by an allergic reaction of being a slave. No taxation without representation. People identified themselves as slaves and to an unfair master and said, no more. You see, out of this rebellious allergic reaction was born a one-person, one-vote way of relating, or democracy, as you humans like to call it. This is a way of relating that I call friend-friend. Notice that both members of this relationship are on the same level and that the communication flows in both directions here. Also, I am certainly aware that the American Revolution was not the first occurrence of this rebellious impulse in the human world. I believe it goes back to hunter-gatherers millennia ago, but I use the American Revolution as a dramatic example. While master-slave relationships are very familiar, friend-friend relationships seem quite unfamiliar. Humans, it seems to me, love talking about their democracy, and I think they have been growing in their awareness of what democracy implies. And while democracy has its political aspects, I think it is in one-to-one relationships, in marriages, partnerships, and families where its biggest revolutions are occurring. One place friend-friend relationships occur is during the dating and romantic stage of relationships. We commonly see friend-friend here, but we tend to overlook it. When perhaps this should be a clue to what is going on in an intimate relationship. Friend-friend relationships, if you know how to make them work, are very stable and last forever. The simple reason is that this is a win-win relationship. Nothing can happen unless both parties vote yes. Thus, everybody wins all the time. Who would want to leave a relationship like that? Friend-friend relationships have several significant problems, though. The first problem is that it is massively inefficient. A simple decision that would take a couple a half second in a master-slave relationship may take weeks to negotiate. If you want to compare master-slave to friend-friend relationships on the human political scene, consider the U.S. presidency versus the U.S. Congress. The former is built around master-slave, and the latter is based on friend-friend. I've never known a U.S. president, and I've known plenty, who did not complain about the slowness of the Congress. Yet I believe it is the Congress that provides the stability to the United States. The turtle paused for a slight moment and looked down at me. This was the first time throughout the class he had related to look directly at me, so I came up to attention a bit and listened a little closer. You see, he went on, I believe that because friend is inefficient and slow, living in it requires the skill of patience. Now, as I've come to learn it, no human child is born with patience. Patience is not a survival trait for human infants. I understand that patience is an adult skill, not a personality trait. Patience is a skill that should be learned during the growing up process. The ideal time to learn it is around the age of 7. Take a 7-year-old, put that child with a group of adults who are displaying patience, and the kid will easily develop the mature skill of patience. When I was 7, I couldn't find my way out from under a rock, and there were no patient turtles to model myself after. So I did not learn patience until I was very much older, and I am still learning. Now when I see a flock of geese crossing the path that I can't miss, that I can't stop and wait through, I slow down. It's patience. It's taking short naps during the day. It wasn't until I was much older that I had ever examined my own level of maturity around patience. I can look back on hundreds of foolish things I did between my younger years and my older years because I was so impatient. Are you impatient? Is your partner? Well, I suggest you consider your impatience as an infant trait. I am not interested in blaming you. No one taught you how to be patient, so learn now. Go take a course on patience. Examine and learn good boundary skills. I think this is a very wise investment. Impatient people have significant trouble with staying in a friend-friend relationship. I believe that they naturally slide over into master-slave in order to meet their needs for haste. If you want to stay in or retrieve a friend-friend relationship, I suggest you learn patience through developing good boundary skills. You will need it. I sat there in my little school desk and chair looking down at the worn-out wooden top of the first grade desk. I could make out faded phrases that had been written on the table through the ages by all the University of Life students who must have passed through these classes before me. Learn boundaries, grow up. Your so-called truth is by no means the only truth. Think about that before you say it. Some were written in clear black ink, and some were worn and faded, but all spelled out just what the turtle was getting at, and I think I understood what that was. Now, the second great difficulty with the friend-friend relationship is that there is no truth, the turtle went on. Most people have never seen a situation where there is no truth. For them, this is really unfamiliar territory. Now, I certainly believe in the truth of God, said the turtle. I am fully aware that each of us has a different view on those truths. Specifics in this field of study, general semantics, refer to WIGO, or what is going on. They point out that there is such a thing as WIGO, but no one knows what it is. Everyone just has their own point of view of WIGO. If I want truth, I have to look into my heart and my soul, and I will find my truth. If I speak to you, I share my version of that truth, my truth. So, the turtle continued, which version of the truth is the right one? One way of looking at it is that each person thinks their version is the best at any given moment. I repeat, each person's current view is the best they have at that moment. Another way of stating the problem is that with only one vote per person, there is no way to choose one of those best truths as the best truth. So, the turtle continued, which version of the truth is the right one? Well, one way of looking at it is that each person thinks their version of the truth at any given moment. I repeat, each person's current view is the best they have at that moment. Another way of stating the problem is that with only one vote per person, there is no way to choose one of those best truths as the best truth. This brings us to an important issue of agreement. One way of saying it is that there is no such thing as agreement, since 2 points of view are never completely identical. At some level of detail, there is always difference and disagreement. Another way of looking at it is that agreement is a decision on both parts that their point of view seems close enough so that preceding action is the best bet. My thoughts seem pretty close to yours. Let's do it. You see, I've found my truth to resonate with my belief that most couples who come to see me started their relationship in friend-friend, and that at some critical point they switched to master-slave and have been there fighting ever since. This is the power struggle I have shown you. It is the world that exists behind door number 2. It is the act of giving up on your dreams. You see, they fall in love, are buddies, and then move into a house where they start to argue over what is right. When I show them the structure of master-slave and friend-friend, they want to get back to where they started. Now, I believe this is quite possible. One thing I noted was that the way people talk in a master-slave relationship is fundamentally different from that in a friend-friend relationship. So let's take a moment and look at what I call master talk.